Black Politics. Black Politics Today. An eye for what's at stake in global politics and your source for the social, economic, and political impact of public policy on the African American community. Your host, Kelly Michael Williams, is a political strategy veteran with an undefeated campaign record and the political experience that spans nearly 3 decades, from Mayor Willie Brown in California to President Barack Obama in our nation's capital. So get ready for a fresh and honest approach on the politics that affect you and your family the most. Now, your host, Kelly Michael Williams.
Right now, in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of something that's going on as wild and crazy as it is, we have to deal with this nonsense, craziness, and everything that's happening. But of course, what I do before we get started, I always stop and thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for just allowing us to host this show, have this broadcast, and to be able to come out and reach out to you each and every week. I'm excited to be able to do that. I'm excited to be able to have the opportunity to just reach out and touch someone, if you will, and be able to talk about the social, the economic, and the political impact of what's going on here in this country, in our community, and across the globe. We got out of 2020, and we barely got out of 2020. 350,000 people dead due to coronavirus. A historical election. 80 million, almost 80 million people voting for Joe Biden. 74 million voting for Donald Trump. Nearly 8 million more than what he got in 2016. Just unprecedented numbers. And then we had the Georgia runoff. And I mean, we barely got through 2020, and now 2021 has erupted like nothing we've ever seen before. And it is clearly like gangbusters out there, and what's happening and what's going on. If we don't pay attention, if we don't realize what's going on, we can repeat what we just saw on Wednesday. And if we do that, we'll be in trouble. So tonight, my guest, we're going to talk about this insurrection. We're going to look at this insurrection, and we're going to talk about the Georgia re-election, and look at how this historic election in Georgia can also impact and have an impact on what's going on with the current state that we're in right now. So we're going to look at that as well and see exactly how these things are impacting us and what's going to happen and where we're going to be. So I am excited and thrilled to have my guests with me tonight. Of course, they're going to, share their insights and their wherewithals about what's happening and where it's happening, and just exactly how things are proceeding as we go forward and looking at 2021 and this administration and what's going to happen with this administration and where it's going to be. So as we get started here, my guest tonight is okay. There we are, crew. Are we all there now? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
All right.
Yes, sir.
We're back up. Sorry about that, guys. I got a couple things coming through here. All right. There we go. So Wilmer, let me start. Let me jump in with you. Brandon, welcome to the show, my brother.
Hey, my man. Great to be here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. And of course, if you want to join the conversation, you give us a call at 516-590-0143. That's 516-590-0143. We'll answer your questions. You can check us out on Facebook at Black Politics Today, on Facebook, and YouTube at Black Politics Today. Let me start with you, Sheriff, because I want to get with you on Georgia runoff and talk to you about that and how things. I mean, I was quite surprised, pleasantly surprised with the results of the runoff. But you had African American, a Jew, unprecedented turnout in a runoff, and and them coming together and actually getting this election. What was your take on it, and what were you thinking that was going to happen? What was going on at that time?
Yeah, good evening. I was really not too surprised, to be honest, about the Georgia race. As you know, we've been watching it very closely here in North Carolina. I've got friends and colleagues in the state of Georgia, in the greater Atlanta area. So I was prayerfully optimistic throughout the entire runoff process, and certainly when things at the highest level became completely idiotic, I think it fueled Black America to really turn out. I know it certainly helped us here in Durham, North Carolina, where we had over 74% of our registered voter population turn out in the general election. So I kind of suspected that would carry over in a runoff. So I'm happy with the results and certainly looking forward to change in our national politics.
Brandon, Sheriff, I was surprised and wasn't surprised. I figured that Warnock would win. I think my surprise was that Ossoff was able to come back and beat Purdue because of the 88,000 he had lost by in the general, and I wasn't sure with that the Republicans would not come back and decide that the Senate was very important to them. So with that, Brandon, I mean, Democrats made some history there, but the GOP didn't turn out. They decided that they weren't going to turn out. They only turned down in 2 counties, but the rest of it, they seemed to stay back. And Democrats even made inroads in those 2 counties where they got more Democratic votes than they got in the general election with Biden.
Yeah, definitely congratulations to Mr. Ossoff and Mr. Warnock. I think John Lewis is looking down and smiling definitely on the outcome of these races, which isn't a bad thing at all. I think not just for these races, but more generally, given what we've seen over the past week with Trump's actions, the assault on the Capitol, even after the assault happening, over 100 GOP members of Congress still voting against certification, and members of the GOP nationally re-electing the same leadership at the RNC that has supported Trump for the past few years. I think the GOP just doesn't get it, and I don't know that it's sustainable for this party to exist going into the future, at least not in this way. One, because I think the party's going to have a very difficult time winning elections nationally. We've already seen without the Electoral College, the party couldn't win. But even beyond that, there are people who can no longer find a place in it. I don't think they can hold a coalition together. I think there's going to be some significant fractures moving forward, and Democrats are going to benefit from it. But I don't think that the GOP should exist as it does today, and as we've seen over the past couple of years moving forward. I think it is bad for them politically is bad for the party, but it's also bad for our democracy more generally for a number of reasons.
And moving to that, Wilmer, I mean, the reality is that they did reelect the same leadership, and they even went so far as to say, you know, Trump is our leader. McDonald, what is it, Mitch?
McConnell.
McConnell, not McConnell. The leader of the GOP,
Ronna McDaniel. Yeah.
McDaniel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Romney's niece or some extended relative. They reelected her as the chair, and they seem to, like Brandon said, they seem to lose sight of what had just happened the day before and what was going on. But the reality of it is, Wilmer, that's what they wanted to have happen, isn't it? The whole riot and everything else.
Well, a couple of things. One, Trump did get 74 million votes.
Yeah, I know.
And he did get more votes the second time than he got the first time.
Right.
So if they're looking at numbers, I can understand how from the numbers they could develop the mindset that they developed, as wrong as it may be. You know, I can understand them developing, seeing that they're on the right track.
Right.
I mean, 74 million votes is not a small number to sneeze at. In terms of their wanting you're talking about the insurrection.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about the whole idea that they would have the insurrection. The next day, they vote to keep Trump and McDaniel in their leadership, and not realize the cost of what that insurrection may cost them, as Brandon said, in the future.
Minister Farrakhan said, never underestimate the blindness that attends arrogance. And I think this is exemplary of that point. What I think you're seeing in the Republican Party is a real split now, they have a real ideological problem, as do the Democrats.
Right, Democrats do too. Between
the party elite, the traditional Republicans, and now the folks that Trump has brought into the fold.
Right.
I think it's still a little early to make the call as to which way this thing is going to fall out for the Republicans. I think we have to wait to see what the Democrats do, not so much with the impeachment vote, but if there is the vote to prevent Trump from running again. If the Democrats can get that passed, if they then can remove Trump from holding office in the future, I think that will be an incredibly powerful blow to Trumpism and what he claims to stand for. And I say claim to stand for because depending on what day it is and which way the wind is blowing, one can never really figure that out. But he has exposed a serious problem within the Republican Party. And again, I think it's still a little too early to call as to how this whole thing is going to shake out. But it's based upon the insurrection and what the insurrection is exposing about people in the party, the cops that showed up and all this other kind of stuff. People are about to really be exposed, and that's not going to fare well for them.
It's not. I mean, you had elected officials showing up and videotaping themselves, going in and then calling themselves patriots doing it.
What's going to happen to Ted Cruz, for example?
Oh,
behind it, and all of those in the House and in the Senate that have been parroting the big lie,
right?
And what's going to happen with them? That we'll find out shortly.
Right. Do the Democrats have the backbone, Sheriff? Do they have the backbone to expel those members and put them out on notice? Because there's a House rule and there is a federal law that allows them to do that. Because, I mean, in essence, they committed treason. They were committing treason. And they took an oath of the Constitution to uphold the Constitution, and they didn't do that. They explicitly went against that Constitution. But do the Democrats have the backbone to make that move, to send that message that needs to be sent? Because the reality of it is, if they don't do it, they're more than willing to do it again.
No. Sad for me to say, I don't think the Democratic Party is aligned enough or has the backbone to do just that. And Wilmer is correct. Let's see what happens to Ted Cruz and the others who stood in lockstep while this was happening, not just last Wednesday, but for the past 4 years, and who have done nothing to silence this or correct this or right the ship, if you will. So no, I don't think the Democrats have the stomach for it. We're not ready for the fight, for the bloodshed. I think it's going, there's going to be some harsh rhetoric. There are going to be some veiled commitments to prosecute, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, I think, at least for the short-term future, we're looking at minimal blowback to those who stood for this. And you've heard me say this before, if we don't have the accountability at the highest level, nothing's going to change. Whether it's you're looking at police brutality incidents, those officers who attended that march, immediate action. They need to be terminated. And I know we've got a couple of from Roanoke, Virginia. But until we have consequences and immediate swift action at holding people accountable for their actions and their words, and no, Democrats are not, they're not built for that.
And that's a shame, Brandon, that's the reality of it is. But the other issue is whether or not the GOP is going to hold itself accountable to those members who were sycophants for Trump throughout the 4 years, but are now going to try to come back and say, "Oh, we're deficit hawks, we're budget hawks. We don't. You can't spend." After they spent more money in 4 years than George Bush and Barack Obama did in 8.
Mm-hmm. So the GOP, and you can make this argument about politicians more generally, just because the carrot for them is often just not having the accountability. But the GOP hasn't shown an ability to hold itself accountable, to hold members accountable. There have over and over again, whether it's been Trumpism, whether it's been sexism, racism, homophobia, xenophobia, whether it's been anti-immigrant, whether it's been whatever number of issues you want to bring up, the GOP has just not shown itself, shown that it can hold itself, that it can hold its members accountable effectively, with rare exception. Every once in a while, there'll be someone that says something that's so egregious or that threatens campaigns or campaigning more generally for the GOP that they'll move. However, in this case, there was an immediate opportunity to hold these members accountable by whipping those votes and ensuring that no Republican members voted against certification to show unity. There was an opportunity. This was a perfect setup because you had this happen. It was a perfect setup for the GOP to distance itself from Trump because Trump made the statements that he made. He incited the crowd. They marched on the Capitol. The attack happened. But then you had the opportunity, if you're members of the GOP, to say, okay, we're going to break from Trump completely. No one's voting against certification. Okay, we actually have the winter meeting happening at the same time, we're going to elect new leadership. The people that have, to your point, supported Trump, enabled Trump for the past 4 years plus, we're going to move on for them. People can say what they want to say about the choices that we made, the compromises we made as a party over the past couple of years, but moving forward, we're going to have a clean break and we're going to move forward. We're going to push for, if not the 25th Amendment, then we're going to push for impeachment, remove him from office as quickly as possible. Let's have a clean break and move forward. It was a setup for the GOP to actually reclaim some of that prominence and reclaim some of that respect that I think people have had for both major political parties in this country over the years. But the GOP instead just said, no, we're not interested in that. We're not interested in doing the right thing. We're not interested in taking this gift that is gift wrapped for us in these events happening at the same time. We're going to continue down this road of Trumpism. We're going to continue to be recalcitrant. We're going to continue to be reactionary when folks bring up legitimate points or issues with things that we've done. And that's why, again, I say this party, this version of the party can't continue to exist because they're not going to be able to hold the coalition together. So the difference with the problem of ideological issues on the left is that people on the left, whether you are very liberal or even just consider yourself to be left of center or centrist, like you can kind of exist in the same room together. With rare exception, there are people that, there are definitely emotions. People are passionate about politics and policy, but people can kind of exist together. But there are people in the GOP who you can't be seen taking a picture with or having a conversation with somebody that's going to bring the Confederate flag into the U.S. Capitol building, someone that's going to hit a Capitol police officer in the head with a fire extinguisher. You can't, they can't coexist. And so whether it's this American Patriot Party that people are talking about, or whether it's just being ineffectual when elections come, I don't think they can hold the coalition together anymore just because there's such a difference between whether you want to call them mainstream or whether you want to call them establishment Republicans are, and where not even movement conservatives anymore, but where these far right folks are. And those are the people that are turning out in elections in numbers. And those numbers, I think, are going to be significant enough for them to maybe start their own party in a different way than we've seen a third party option happen in the U.S. in a long time.
If I may,
go ahead.
Brandon just took the words out of my mouth. That bubble must be over my head. Have the Democrats and the Republicans both set us up for another third party push. Because right now, what Brandon said, absolutely spot on, and I can see very familiar behavior or similar behavior on the Democratic side. So we continue to hear talk about it, the tired of the two-party system, and have we just set ourselves up for that moving forward? So.
What do you think, Wilmer? Have they set themselves up for it? I mean, one of the things that I still look at, I still go back to 2016. This is a result of everything that happened in 2016, and when people sat on their behinds and decided, oh no, I don't care, it's okay, we'll elect the reality show guy because we don't like Hillary. Democrats wise, but then they did not secure the Senate where they can keep him in check. After they got the House, they didn't secure the Senate where they could have done some things, and it's coming back to root. Sitting on your behind during an election has consequences.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of things. One, on the Republican side, what I think we're seeing is the culmination of the Tea Party, starting back in, what was that? 2010.
Yeah.
With Tom Tancredo and "We Want Our Country Back" and all of that rhetoric, and the Republicans had an opportunity as that began to develop to put a stake in the ground and say, for example, when when the late Congressman John Lewis and Barney Frank and who was your brother from Philly? Another congressman, I can't remember who it was. They were walking across the Capitol grounds and they were spat upon and called all kind of. Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, they didn't come out and say, no, this is not right. There's no place for this in our politics. They courted that crew, and that now has developed, I believe, into what we experienced on Wednesday. In terms of the Democrat side, I take issue with your point about people staying home, because Hillary Clinton just ran a horrific campaign.
Yeah.
For one, and we can't talk about people staying home and not talk about voter suppression and the number of votes, for example, that were cast in Detroit and not counted. You know, Donald Trump lost Michigan. If you look at he won Michigan by something like 75,000 votes, but there were something like 300,000 votes in Michigan that were cast but never counted, and most of those votes came from Flint and came from Detroit. So we can't talk about people not turning out without talking about the concerted effort that the Republicans put in to voter suppression, because I could show you data that would show you that Donald Trump lost Arizona, Donald Trump lost Michigan, he lost Pennsylvania, he lost North Carolina, and he lost Florida. So the stay home thing gives me a little heartburn.
But now,
let me finish one more thing, because at my age, I'll forget it.
I doubt that you'll forget, Doctor.
Oh, it's the point about the Democrats. I think Brandon is right that because of the egregious, noxious, insurrectionist behavior that we've seen from the Republicans, there are people in that camp that you can't take pictures with. I think you're absolutely right. But on the Democrat side, as we look at what the Democrats have done to Bernie Sanders, I think that there is a deep, deep division within the Democratic Party, which if Joe Biden cannot pull this thing out and pull it out quickly, there's going to be a very similar division on the Democrat side that exists on the Republican side, because we've got 30 to 40 million people that are about to be evicted from their homes. We've got record numbers of unemployment. We've got, all of these real financial issues and Joe Biden is now talking about maybe we got to do something with Social Security. The $2,000 that I had campaigned on. Well, maybe we don't have enough. So that turnaround by the Biden administration could galvanize the far left to say, here we go again. And final point, we put Joe Biden in office. We put Joe Biden in office, and we saved the Senate for the Democrats. The question's going to be, what do we get for it?
Yeah, what are we going to get for it, Sheriff? Because
we didn't demand anything. What do we get for it?
Say it again, Doctor.
We didn't demand anything, a la Congressman Clyburn. We didn't demand nothing. We ain't gonna get nothing.
That's true. Looking at that, Sheriff, and just the pure insanity of what happened on Wednesday, and the idea of how 126 House members and 16 senators walking in there saying they are going to object to the certification. Ultimately, you got 7 or 8 of the senators still objecting, and as Brandon pointed out earlier, you still had 121 senators still say, "Yeah, we're voting against this, and we don't think it." I mean, the failure of the Capitol Police, the FBI, and all the intelligence agencies, the idea that we're going to impeach, but we still won't necessarily get him out of office, and like we said, like Wilmer said, Democrats put Biden in. It appears he may be already backpedaling, and now we have to look at a census that's going to redistrict, reapportion, especially the House.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats may be out of power in 2 years. What can they do, and what should they be doing in this first 2 years? And in fact, tomorrow, as soon as they can, or at least on the 21st of January, that will put them in a better position or a power position to be able to actually make a change and do something that Wilmer is saying that it doesn't happen quickly. There's going to be an insurrection in the Democratic Party.
And I agree with that. And I agree that the Democrats have not asked for anything. And Wilmer is absolutely spot on.
I meant African Americans, not Democrats.
No, I got you. Yeah, that was my next point, that we put him in office. And now is the time for us to get our list together, get our act together, and toe the line. Because you're right. The mid-year elections, or 2 years from now, are going to be quite telling. And the first 100 days are going to be quite telling as to what direction the Biden administration is going to go. And to your comment or question about how did this happen at the Capitol, well, we know how it happened. From a law enforcement perspective, somebody dropped the ball. No, excuse me, someone was directed to drop the ball.
Directed to drop the ball. Exactly.
Yeah, because 2 months ago, right? So 2 months ago, when Black Lives Matters march on DC, we had National Guard on site 24 hours ahead of time, lined up on the Capitol steps.
Yeah,
right.
It's not like we didn't know what happened on Wednesday was forecasted. I'm down here in North Carolina. I knew it. I got a phone call on Tuesday. We knew what was coming. So someone was instructed or directed or, hey, stand down, stand back. What's the president said? Stand by.
Stand by.
Down. Yeah. So, and it's unimaginable for me as a law enforcement professional to see that happen. It's a black eye for our country, certainly, but for the men and women who took the oath to serve and protect at that level, it's an embarrassment. And when I'm hopeful that the Department of Justice, FBI, HIS, and all of them will come together and bring these individuals to justice for what happened, whether it's the death of the 5 people there, the law enforcement officer, and the breaking and entering. We all know those are federal crimes.
Right.
So some people need to be brought to justice and done so quickly.
Well,
hey, Kelly, can I ask the sheriff a question?
Sure.
Sheriff, I heard, and this makes sense to me. It is a conspiracy theory, but it does make sense to me, that in previous rallies, these folks have come armed.
Yes.
In this rally, they did not.
Yes.
And I've heard people discussing they didn't because a compromise was struck. If you don't come armed, we'll let you in the Capitol.
That's not too far-fetched.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. But you're right. I think they knew exactly what they needed not to do in order to do what they did. And a statement today, the chief who just resigned said he was, quote, hamstrung by Senate security leaders as he was making his plan for Wednesday. So he didn't name names, but I was hamstrung. So you're absolutely right. We didn't see the long weapons at this protest like we saw in Charlottesville and other places across the country, because they knew what they needed not to do in order to do what they did. Very shameful. very shameful.
And by not coming with their arms exposed, it allowed them to, be able to say that they are coming peaceful and they're just, carrying the flags and doing things. But a lot of them, in my opinion, by going through the doors, the windows, and everything else, because they had them backpacks, a lot of them had guns, in my opinion, in those backpacks, although they may not have long guns. Because one of the guys who got arrested had weapon on him and had the Molotov cocktails in his car, and then the other guy had the zip ties. Brandon, I mean, looking at this crisis and how even now the GOP are saying, well, let's just let it go. He only has 10 more days. Let's just let him get out of here, and then everything will be back okay. We kumbaya, we're fine. Why are they so resistant of holding anybody accountable? Are those voters and in that group so, in this case, powerful that they're that scared about holding up the Constitution of the United States?
I think Brother Wilmer is correct. There are a lot of people in the GOP, a lot of people on the right side of the political spectrum, whether they consider themselves Republican, conservative, or whatever, who are in love with this Tea Party idea, who are in love with this patriot idea, who do this patriot role playing, and they got an opportunity to basically live out their dreams. It was Grand Theft Auto Tea Party edition on Capitol Hill this past week.
Exactly I'm gonna use that.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
I'll give you credit, Brandon, but I'm gonna use that.
And that for a lot of people on the right side of the political spectrum, that's the dream. That's what they want to do. They want to be able to say, what I did was just like Paul Revere, one if by land, two if by sea. What I did was just like being at Bunker Hill. What I did was just like Saratoga. What I did was just like any Revolutionary War action or battle. They're in love with this idea, and it's not attached with reality, or at least it wasn't before last Wednesday. Now they do have something to look back on it, and I'm sure when a lot of those folks got home, as they were having drinks in the hotels, there were photos, videos of them going back to the hotel lobbies, not wearing masks and having drinks together. They were saying, this is going to be in the history books. My children and grandchildren are going to read about this, and I'm going to be just like Paul Revere. I'm going to be just like these patriots who took the country from an oppressive regime, who wouldn't take no for an answer, who stood up. And that is the issue that you were getting at with the GOP not pushing back on some of these things that are said and done for the past, Tea Party for the past 20 years or so. Getting caught up in that kind of symbolism, that kind of nationalism, it does pull at the heartstrings. It does engender this emotional response. It does make people feel more connected and motivated to not just the country, but to whatever person, whatever personality is saying these things and making the connections. But ultimately, it takes people to a place that eventually they want to live out the dream. They want to take it to its logical end, which is them attacking the Capitol and bashing Capitol police officers over the head with as someone that worked on Capitol Hill for many years, it's crazy. But go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm saying beating them over the head with the fire extinguisher and the American flag. Right. And that just kills me, Wilmer. They're carrying the American flag. They're committing insurrection and treason, and they're using the American flag to do it. And one of the ladies that I heard, I think she did an interview with someone. Her response was exactly what Brandon was saying. She said, "Why are they criticizing us? We're not Black Lives Matter. Why are they talking about us? Right? And she said, "We're patriots." And I was listening to that, I'm like, are you out of your mind?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Yes.
yeah.
Now, so that right there speaks volumes in that this is a white nationalist oriented move. Basically, a lot of those folks that have been talking about the vote being stolen and all of that, they are truly upset that we put Joe Biden in office. If it wasn't for the African American vote, Joe Biden would not be president. If it wasn't for the African American vote, the Democrats would not be in control of the Senate. And this has incensed these people. Now, some people listening will say, well, wait a minute, Wilmer, we don't hear them talking in white nationalist terms. Dr. Ronald Walters wrote a book called White Nationalism, Black Interest. I'm trying to find it. Anyway, and he says in this book that when you are the dominant ethnic group, or I hate to use the term race because race doesn't exist, but for this conversation, I'll throw that out there. When you're the dominant race and you are writing legislation, you don't have to speak in racist context or terms because you're the one in control. So you can speak in the context of national interest, understanding that that's code language because it's your interest that you consider to be the nation. So that there was another woman that was walking down the street. She had been maced and she was crying. And the reporter asked her, "Why are you crying?" She said, "Because I got maced." And she said, "And we just stormed the Capitol. It's a revolution." No, homegirl, you just got played. Your stupid behind just got played. You're lucky you didn't get shot. Final thing. This hasn't gotten a lot of discussion, but I know you guys are aware of this. There were people in the Capitol that were looking for Mike Pence. They wanted to lynch Mike Pence Wednesday. Now, I'm no Mike Pence fan. I think Mike Pence is a total fool and nothing but a fraud. But I'm not advocating that you lynch Mike. Yeah, you might want to tie him up and drag him around a bit. But you don't want to lynch Mike Pence. And they were going to lynch Mike Pence. They were going to do real harm to Nancy Pelosi. Oh, they were going to lynch Mike Pence because they, based upon what Donald Trump told them, they saw Mike Pence as a traitor. And finally, Lindsey Graham's in the airport yesterday, and he was verbally accosted by a whole bunch of folks in the airport because they see him now as being a traitor. This is some dangerous stuff, folks. And these folks are playing for real.
No, Wilmer,
it's not over, Sheriff. It's not over.
It ain't over.
Even with Trump leaving office and all that happening, they're going to continue on because they're going to, in my opinion, they're probably going to attack or go after. There it is, black interests. Go after those elected officials who did not vote and did not support it. They're probably going to go after them electorally or politically. But there's going to be some bloodshed. There's going to be some bloodshed.
Yeah, no, this is not over. In one sense of reality, this is the beginning. And we already know that there are protests and riots and takeovers planned for the 17th, the 19th, and next week and beyond. So even once Trump is out of office, this will continue because they've spent the past 4 years energizing themselves and off this vow that is being spewed out of his mouth and really soaking up every word of it, believing every word of it. This is my country. I'm taking it back. This is my city. I'm taking it back. Whatever the case may be. So no, we're not done. We're not done. 5 years ago, when I was teaching constitutional law here at Durham Community College, one of my students asked, "What's it going to take for us to turn this around?" At that particular time, we were right in the middle of Mike Brown and the Black Lives Matter movement, and I told him without a hesitation, revolution. Well, here we are. We're on the verge of a revolution that's going to divide this country, divide the races, as Wilmer said. I understand we don't like to use it, but that's what it's doing. It's pitting all of us against all of them, and whoever falls in the middle will be viewed as a traitor.
So I've said it on this show before. I'll say it again. Strap up, go out, get your gun, register it, take your lessons, learn the law, but strap up. Brandon, if the Democrats don't impeach, even though they may not be able to get him out of office, but if they don't impeach, taxpayers are going to be on the hook for Donald Trump for the rest of his life. $200,000 pension he's going to get. He's going to have Secret Service protection. He may even get about $200,000 in discretionary funds, for vacation, for his office and everything else, as much as $1 million for office and staff. And then we also know that he's just going to rip people off blind for his library if he decides to do one. And what he's ripping people off now. Do the American people understand what that means? I mean, did they really understand that they need to get him out of there, not allow him to run for office again, cut off his pension and the Secret Service protection and all the taxpayer benefits that he's going to get?
Well, unfortunately, the real losers here are everyday people, American citizens living in this country who want the best for the country. Now, there are some folks that are on the right side. There are some folks on the left side that say or do things that are ill-advised, and they're just misinformed. Remember, they're well-intentioned, but just misinformed. I would say that the people who stormed the Capitol building were not only ill-informed, but they had ill intent. They knew what they were doing. And while misinformation and disinformation from Donald Trump drove them to that point, we can't take their agency away from them and say that they were somehow mystically hypnotized by Trump, who forced them to, he was the Pied Piper, forcing that, leading them to storm the Capitol. But everyday American people are the folks that are going to take the hit here, whether it's being on the hook for Trump's pension and Secret Service and presidential library, et cetera, moving forward, whether it's being fleeced, as millions of Americans have been fleeced by donating to his campaign legal fund that's really going to set up his post-election political organization. But the thing that concerns me the most is, Kelly, you know this, I worked in the U.S. Senate for over 5 years. I went through security with Capitol Police officers every day. We always had protesters, whether it was Code Pink on the left or the moral majority on the right. There were always people there. But what happened this week was very different. And I think a lot of people would be surprised to know the level of access you have as just a normal person to Capitol Hill. That has ended. There's no way. It hurt me to see the fencing and to see the National Guard, although I know it's necessary. It hurt me to see that around the Capitol building, because something that is unique about America, something that I think both folks on the right and the left side have held dear, is the amount of access that you as an American citizen have to your government. And so when people are saying, I came to take my country back, what you're actually doing is removing the country from folks in the community. You're actually removing the country from people that need access to be able to advocate for the changes that they want to see. And that's the thing that hasn't been talked about as much because there's so
Right.
many immediate things that need to be addressed, but it's everyday American citizens that are going to be footing the bill and paying the real consequences here. Again, whether it's paying for Trump's pension or just not having access to government in the same way because of these security concerns and people wanting to make a big statement by saying, okay, we've cut this off, we've erected this gate, we've done this in terms of access,
Right.
and unfortunately, it's gonna make our democracy take a hit because people just aren't going to have access in the same way.
And it's a shame. It's a pure shame. Wilmer, our democracy is in jeopardy, and the reality of it is that what Brandon was saying is that the access that we had to our legislators, and not to mention people also haven't been talking about, is that there were insurgents at different state legislators and different state capitals as well, across the country. I think it was 6 or 7 other states that they marched on and went upon as well. And fortunately, most of them were closed and they did not get access to them, but that was there as well. I only got a few minutes left, and I know you have a hard stop, Wilmer. But two things I want to get you. I want you to give me what's at stake, but I want to talk about it from the standpoint. I want to also hit up the idea and fact that these evangelicals, you haven't heard a word from them. Kenneth Copeland, Paula White, you haven't heard anything from them. But they were out there so hard and strong for Trump beforehand. And I was listening to a message Sunday, and it was like the Roman Empire fell, Babylon fell. What makes us think that America can't fall?
Oh, well, it is falling.
Right.
There's no the empire is done. It just, we just have to figure out how the depths to which this is going to fall. But the empire has ended, and I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago, "The Unaligned Nations Realign," and the focus of the piece had to do with Iran, China, Venezuela, Russia, Cuba. They've all come together in an anti-imperialist move or mindset to challenge the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean challenge the United States militarily. I mean challenge the United States socially and economically.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole idea of American exceptionalism and manifest destiny and all of that, done. It's over. And you even now, the European Union just last week signed an investment deal with China.
Yeah.
Even though Biden begged the EU not to do it.
Yeah.
And the EU said, man, forget you. Your days are over. We are now going to, and particularly since Britain left the EU, the United States doesn't have the poodle in the room that it used to have during the EU conversations. Britain isn't in the room anymore championing our interests.
Right.
So the European Union told the United States, go pound sand. We have to operate in our best interest. So, we're not swinging like we used to swing. It ain't working like that anymore. So it is over. It's how it manifests. The whole thing with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And the United States trying to get Germany not to build the Nord. Germany said, look, you can't tell us how to manage our energy policy. We're not going with you on that anymore. So this party's over. There's still a little more champagne probably to drink, but the party, there might be a few finger sandwiches on the table, but the party's over. Folks just it's over, man.
So what's at stake for us?
Everything. Well, here's the other thing I wanted to point out. When you look at what happened on Wednesday, and you ask yourself, what were these people fighting about? They were fighting about a lie. They believe that their democracy was taken from them. They were fighting for a lie.
Right.
When you ask Black Lives Matter folks what they're down there protesting what? Extrajudicial murder by the police. They're down there in the name of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and they're down there with honest, rational, reasonable claim.
Right.
They get beaten and shot at.
Legal.
These folks get led onto the floor of the Senate.
Led
Onto the floor of the Senate. And you know, I worked up there for a summer. I was an intern with Congressman Robert Matsui. And so, Brandon, I understand what you're saying. Walking through Statutory Hall and having access to the facility, all of that has changed.
Gone.
But you do know when you walk in that building, that's the most secure public building in the world. There's no way you get into that camp unless somebody gives you the key, opens the door, and lets you in. That ain't happening.
And there's no way you find offices that don't have names on their door unless somebody told you.
Right.
Okay. Because, hey, I've been up there a whole bunch of time when I was working at the White House and going up to the Hill. I mean, it's a maze. It's just like the White House. The White House is a maze, and that's a maze. You don't know these offices. You know whose office it is to go up there and not have a name on the door and go in and find the people that you're looking for.
Yeah, because half of those offices in the Capitol, half of those hideaways, they look like broom closets from the outside.
Exactly. Right. And even though you may see Speaker of the House, you don't know which door it is. You still got to go down there. So let's close it out here, man. What's at stake for us, Wilmer? How are we going to get through this?
Well, we're going to get through it. I don't know where we're going to be when we're done, but we will get through this. I believe in the democracy. I mean, I believe in the tenets of it. We don't have a democracy, which is what we are fighting for. And really, that's what those other folks are fighting against. But the left has to take on the mindset that these insurrectionists took on. I'm not saying that they need to engage in the behavior, but they need to be as stalwart and as focused as these folks are, because when you look at who Joe Biden is nominating for his cabinet, it, as in the words of that brilliant black philosopher George Clinton, it's the same school of foolfish. It's the same old. Yeah. And if you're down with Libya, and if you're down with what we did in Syria, and if you're down with what we're doing in Yemen, then the folks that he's putting in and are going to give you the same stuff. But if you want something new, you're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to fight. And I don't mean like Donald Trump said. I ain't talking about storming the Capitol. You're going to have to fight for it.
Yeah. Sheriff, what's at stake for us?
I agree. Everything. And I particularly agree with Wilma saying the Democratic Party is going to have to take on the mindset of the right and get angry enough to stand up and demand change.
Yeah.
And we cannot sit back and be passive and try to reach across the aisle and build consensus. No, we got to fight. And because if we don't, from where I'm sitting, we will lose another generation of brilliant Black minds and young Black men and women who either become disinterested, disenfranchised, or worse. And so, yeah, our future as a people and as a country, because right now we have an opportunity as Black people to continue to shape the political landscape as we just did. And if we don't do that, our existence is at stake.
Brandon, what's at stake, man?
We've got to create an environment in which everyone in this country can reach their full potential That's important for people from our community, and it's important for the nation in terms of competitiveness economically and otherwise. If we don't have a functioning democratic system with parties that anyone can find a place as long as they align ideologically, if we don't have a functioning judicial system, we don't have a law enforcement system that has bias in it. If we don't have the ability to give American citizens access to their legislators because of fear of security issues, then that limits our ability to be able to create that environment in which everyone can reach their full potential. And so that is what is at stake. There are still opportunities, whether it's for the GOP, for members more generally, or for everyday citizens, for us to move this forward. But if we don't make the right decisions, we're not going to like the country that we're going to be living in moving forward.
It's amazing to me that the reality of almost having a quote unquote dictator in the United States was that far away from occurring. If Pence wanted to do what he said, if the Supreme Court wanted to do what he said, if the district court wanted to do what he said, it was literally that point where slowly but surely everyone who has been in autocratic societies have talked about the overthrowing of their government, fascistness coming in, and how it completely comes in slowly but surely and just overthrows those government, where now you have like Turkey and other places changing their constitution to allow the president to stay there for 20, 30 years until they want to get rid of it, until they decide they're going to leave or their family takes over and something else is going to happen. So it's crazy. But like Wilmer said, it's falling. It's just a matter of where we're going to end up. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you taking the time out today and joining me. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but we'll certainly clean that up and have that better. America, I mean, you witnessed it this week. You witnessed it. You saw it. You saw what was going on. You understand what's happening. Voting is a necessity in our community and it's in our country. But if like Wilmer said, and like the sheriff and Brandon said, if we don't engage in this democracy that's left, if we don't engage in it and fight and have the anger and have the vitriol of what is being done to us and to our country, we might as well pack up and go somewhere else. Because the reality of it is that if we don't fight for it, and not like the rioters, like Wilmer said, not like the rioters were fighting for it, but how we need to fight for it democratically, we're going to lose. And you know where it is. We will probably, as Black folks in our community, be the ones on the short end of the stick, as typically we are, unless we come together. You may not like it, but you better strap up and get ready, okay? Because it's coming. It's coming. Until next week. Yeah. Until next week. Yeah. If it's social, economic, or political, it's Black Politics Day. Watch the news, pay attention, and see what's happening. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you joining me tonight. And certainly, you've given us a wealth of understanding and things to think about and also be concerned about. So until next week, we'll see you then. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night. Thank you all.